Hi YouTube, I think this is my first time actually doing a proper YouTube video, but I wanted to share my recent experience at Cheltenham Book Fest. It was probably one of the best panels I've ever been on because of the questions. I'm going to share clips of the panel, and it's going to include questions such as what's my favourite writing tip, what is my favourite character and how did I write the characters and what inspired them, why it's so important to write fantasy books and young adult books, and just other bits and bobs about writing and my writing journey and my writing experiences and my background in psychology and how I've literally created my own therapy in my books. It was hosted by the amazing Danielle Jawando, and she's asked these questions, and the recordings that I've got from it don't have the questions, so I'm going to have snippets of the question and then I'm going to have the video there. If you've liked any of it, if you want to ask me any more questions, please comment it as well. Please subscribe. I'd love to do more YouTube stuff. And if anyone's interested in like coaching or mentoring as well, again, just drop a comment and I want to see what I can do. I want to try and make this a viable route potentially. I know obviously I'm primarily on TikTok and Instagram, but I want to migrate over to YouTube as well. So any interaction that you guys have with this video would be absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much in advance, and I hope that you enjoy it.
Darcy Theo, who is the debut author on the panel, and Andy is of British Greek Cypriot descent with an educational background in clinical psychology and teaching. He's also a booktucker and a bookstagrammer where he posts at Andy Darcy Theo, so if anyone wants to follow him. And he's also been documenting his author journey on there with his many followers. So he has millions of views and likes, which is nearly as big as your to be read pile apparently. And his debut book, The Light That Blinds Us, which I was just completely blown away by, was published this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, can you give us our panelists a round of applause?
So there's four main characters, each with a different elemental power that's inspired by the zodiac signs and the elements that are associated with each. So like fire signs would be your Aries, Sagittarius, and Leo. So the personality traits were kind of inspired by those. And Alexis is our POV narrator. There is a couple of other POVs in the chapter, in the story in different chapters. But in the second book, it's going to be our main character Alexis, and he's going to be joined with one of the other four characters. And I think at some point this month we're going to be sharing the cover of The Dark That Hides Us, which is book 2. And I think at that point they'll show the element of that book, which will show each character, and we get to explore their backgrounds, their driving forces, and their motivations. I feel like from book 1, the character that I liked, the secondary character I loved the most was probably Demi, who's the main love interest, but she's so much more than the love interest. She's not just a daughter or a girlfriend or a sister, she's her own person. That's more than enough. And I like her groundedness, her faith, her resilience, and I feel like readers will really enjoy exploring her more across the series, across the hopefully 4 books that we get to do. But I like them all. They're like my children. I just like when I teach the students, who's your favourite? I'm like, all of you are my favourites. So, I like them all. I feel like they've all got their own moment to shine in the light, and I can't wait to explore them more in the sequels. Is that it feels so much like escapism. It allows us to escape the reality of our world while still sharing elements with it. And what I wanted to do is, with my story being a contemporary fantasy, I wanted readers to be able to lose themselves in this world with these characters, but at the same time know that some of the issues that are presented are very real issues faced by a lot of people. And I'd never wanted the reader to feel that disconnect between the experiences that people share and the fantasy story. So I feel like that's why I chose fantasy. It allowed me to be creative and to look at mythologies from Greek mythology to North African mythologies, whilst at the same time presenting material that allows readers to be educated on topics that are so heavily stigmatized and misrepresented from what I see in the media in terms of the glamorization and dramatization of mental illness. A lot of the time I wanted to unpick that in a way that felt authentic while still feeling very epic and inspiring, I guess. And Tasha said, I think that with my story being a story with elemental powers, hope is a power in its sense as well, and I feel like it's hope in so many different facets. It's hope in oneself, it's hope in one's ability to be resilient and to come back and to recover even if people leave, and even if you stumble, and it's okay. And I read a passage a few years ago that said something like, hope isn't delicate, it isn't a butterfly's wing, it's powerful, it's dirt on the cheeks, it's getting back up after a fight, and it's facing a day every single day. And I found that it really resonated, because especially in mental illness, we can lose a lot of hope, and hopelessness is in majority of mental illnesses. And I feel like that despair, I didn't want that to translate too heavily onto the page without losing the hope that I think the young adult audience really is receptive to. And also I think that I want to make sure that they don't lose that. As a teacher, of someone who teaches sixth form students, it's so easy to see that be swayed or affected by what they see on social media and what they hear from everything else. So I just wanted to show them that hope is there, and even if you lose it, you can get it back, and that even in the darkest moments there's light, and there's darkness in light as well. And it's about just making sure that you're seeking that out, and that, to quote the title of the book, even if there is light and it is blinding, there's no better way to live essentially than to keep following that hope. So I feel like it's more important for the young adult audience than it is for anyone, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yourself, so obviously I know with your background in kind of psychiatry as well, and kind of working on you worked on a
psychiatric ward.
Yeah. And I think what I loved about Alexis as well is that he has issues with his mental health, but that is not just a story.
Yeah.
And there's not this sense that he needs to be fixed, and you know, it's just that kind of, like you were saying, the hope and the kind of, there'll be some kind of darker days and more hopeful days. But what did you do in terms of the research?
Loads, so much, because again, I wanted to ensure that it came across in a really authentic, genuine way that didn't feel like it was being used for the point of narrative, but it still felt like it was real. So I did a lot of research, obviously, in where I was working. So I worked as a healthcare assistant in a psychiatric hospital, and I also worked as a clinical psychology assistant in a private firm in London. And that just taught me so much, both in terms about the manifestation of these conditions and the presentation, the cognitive style, how they appear, how the behavioural patterns, but also the treatments. So I was trained in cognitive behaviour therapy, dialectical behaviour therapy, trauma-based therapy, and I looked at those, and when I was doing my research about Alexis, it wasn't just about trying to get his profile correct, which I've got an author's note about how the profile is constructed based on all that I've learned, and a family history that taught me a lot, that also was so stigmatized at the time, but that I kind of explored for a lot of uncomfortable conversations. But I wanted to again make sure that that felt really genuine. But the research in terms of how treatment and how people approach therapy as well. And in fact, in my second book, a lot of stuff goes on, a lot of bad stuff goes on, and the characters, because of how important I believe that is, the mentor character makes it mandatory that they have to experience both physical therapy but also emotional therapy. And I was researching how we can maybe do different types of therapy. So obviously I was looking at what we do in the Western world, but when I went to India, we looked at how Eastern cultures practice recovering from mental illness. So how they use meditation as a frontline therapy, how they use mindfulness. And then I wanted to research and create my own therapy that was elemental inspired. So there's a character, so Alexis, when he's having his therapy, there's a character, and she teaches him that each emotion has a different vibration and a different frequency, and that therefore has a different temperature, and that she works by him disclosing and sharing his experiences. The therapist can work on the kind of altering of that temperature to try and help it to manifest itself in different ways in the body. And that was probably one of my favourite things that I've done, writing, like creating new therapy based on magic, but also at the same time feeling like, oh god, like it's just aura, that sort of stuff. So that was one of my favourite things to research about Alexis' character, and also about his character arc across this book, but also across future books as well.
So interesting, and honestly, I could listen to you.
Piggybacking on both what you said, I completely agree with you. I think my take would be to learn to write is to understand the books that you're reading and what works in those stories. So I think definitely read widely, read in your genre, read beyond your genre, and learn about how you connect to those characters. And I think the characters should be at the forefront of the story. I personally believe that no one's going to care about what happened to the characters in the plot unless they care about the characters in the first place. So figure out, I always think of these three things. What's your character's motivations? What's their biggest fear? And what's the lie that they tell themselves? And if you know what those three things are, then you can help figure out what the character arc is that you want to go on. And then from that, you can write a plot around that that helps to go against that arc or to enable it, whether that's a revenge arc or a coming of age or anything like that. So I think nail the characters and then build the plot around it. And then I agree as well, you can't edit a blank page. And the quote you said about the only difference between a published and non-published author is that the published author never gave up. Like it took me, I started writing my book as an English project for school at 13 years old, and I got my publishing deal when I was, how old was I? 24? 24. Yeah, when I was 24 and I'm now 25 and it just came out. So it took a very long time, but throughout that 10, 12 year period, I doubted myself a lot. I didn't need it. And I doubted a lot of other people. And I think that's the important thing. You're going to have a lot of people doubting you, so don't let yourself doubt. Don't doubt yourself, because you're going to be in your mind all the time. And make sure that the company that you give yourself is pleasant company. So I think once you've got that, then you can just write the story that you want to read, and write a story that you think is going to help one person's life. Because guaranteed, if that's all it does, then I think you could call yourself an accomplished author.
Really sound writing advice from all of you. I feel like what was that?
So that was it. You could tell I'm not going to be one of those flashy YouTubers that can edit perfectly. It's just going to be very, very authentic, very, very basic, you could say. But it's still going to be, me, an unedited, slightly filtered version of me. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.